Hey, what is going on, guys? In today's video, I want to have a conversation on if the drum gun should come into Project Flux Season 4, and if so, what state it should be implemented in, as historically it did exist in late Season 4. However, you have to keep in mind that the drum gun is extremely powerful, one of the best weapons to have ever existed in this game, and I think they're hesitant to add it because it would be extremely broken. So in today's video, I want to have a discussion about any official news we've heard on what they're planning with the drum gun, the current meta state without the drum gun, how the meta would drastically change if the drum gun came in with its historical stats. We'll then look at other semi-historical stats we could use, so from later Chapter 1, that maybe we could make balance changes to the drum gun and then add it, and then finally what I would suggest to do to possibly add it in. Okay, first off, is there any official news? Well, there's no official announcement in the news tab on the Discord, but if you search for poll, you can see that developers have been mentioning that they're supposed to make a poll on things like the drum gun being added as well as a pump shotgun buff. So it sounds like they are considering the change, but there's no official news as of yet. Okay, current meta state. As things stand, I think the balance of power between shotguns and SMGs is pretty much 50-50. Both of them are really powerful. You can run double shotgun. You can run one shotgun plus SMG. You can run double SMG. I think you can really go either way, and I think it's pretty much even between the two. This is a bit different than like Easy FN Season 4, where I definitely give the edge to shotguns. But because shotguns are weaker and SMGs are stronger, I think it's pretty much even. However, this is the big point. If the drum gun comes in historically, I think it will easily tilt the meta in favor of SMGs. I think the drum gun will easily be the strongest weapon in the game. Reason why is because it's got really good damage per second. 243 is the second highest, only behind the TAC SMG. You have a 50-round magazine. You can fire for about 5.5 seconds continuously. This thing shreds structures. The damage fall-off isn't even that bad. It's not the most accurate, but it's accurate enough, and the DPS is so high to where it can kind of work as an AR at mid-range. I mean, this thing is basically just a replacement for your shotgun, for your SMG, and even for your AR and your structure destroyer. It effectively fills almost every role except for sniping. I think it'll be extremely broken. I think this is problematic because what I really enjoy about this meta right now is that there's a lot of freedom of flexibility of choice to run what you want. However, if we get a weapon that's just this broken, it kind of incentivizes you to basically have to carry it every time you find it, which I think takes away from, the dynamics of the game where you can pick different weapons depending on what you like. In this situation, vast majority of people are going to take the drum gun every time they find it. And it's not great when you can just run around with 3 drum guns and that's acceptable. So this moves into our next point, which is other semi-historical balance states that we could use. Because the drum gun did not stay this broken forever, right? The first balance change came in Season 5, patch 5.20, which increased the bloom when you ADS'd, as well as I believe when you jumped, as well as damage fall-off was made worse. So instead of doing 65% damage at long range, you're only doing 55% damage. Right? I think that definitely would help. I think that brings the drum gun down from X tier to S tier. And the reason why I say that is because once you get the accuracy and damage fall off nerf, it's a lot harder to justify using the drum gun as a AR. Because you're only doing about half damage, less accurate, don't really see this thing as being a particularly amazing AR. Then, in Season 9, starting with patch 9.01, you saw the damage get reduced from 2627 to 2223. And I think this is really important here, because this brings down the DPS from a honestly ridiculous 243 down to 207. So it's still a tiny bit higher than the SCAR at 198, but it's quite a bit lower than the Tactical SMG and a little bit lower than the Silenced SMG, which is 260 for the Tactical and 216 for the Silenced, right? So I think that really helps, and I think that brings the gun down to A tier. It's still a really good SMG, and it can kind of be a structure destroyer as well, but I don't really see it as being a shotgun anymore, as really you need to be pushing like 230, 240 DPS to really replace a shotgun. At 207, I don't think that's enough to justify entirely replacing a shotgun. And then in version 9.30, you saw the rate of fire reduced from 9 rounds a second to 8, and the magazine from 50 to 40. And I think this has really put, drop the drum gun down to like C to B tier. It's not terrible, but at this point you have 184 DPS. I just don't overall think it's that amazing. So this kind of brings us into our final point here, is what would I put the balance at? Now, as you know, I'm generally in favor of making some balance changes in favor of making the meta more open and free over having pure historical accuracy, because I honestly think the drum gun is just too broken in its historical state. What I would suggest is I would look at trying to go to the 9.01 stats. So that would mean Yes, you have the accuracy nerf and you have 22, 23 damage. I would not go to the 9.30 stats where you drop the rate of fire in magazine, as I think the drum gun's going to have a hard time competing against like TAC SMG in that state. But if you go to the state where it does 207 DPS, right? It's the lowest DPS of the SMGs, less than the silence, less than the tactical, but you get the advantage of a giant magazine, right? And I think that will be a pretty fair state to put the drum gun in, where it'll be a solid option. I think A tier, competitive, but not going to be completely busted. I think also just having the accuracy nerf or just having the damage would also be reasonably acceptable. I think it would be S tier in that situation. But given that the TAC SMG and Silence SMG are already strong, I don't think that's going to be too bad. But I would definitely say some nerf, either the damage, accuracy, or both, would be warranted just to make it a bit more reasonable, right? That way it will be a competitive option, but hopefully not completely broken. So you can still pick between, do I want a drum gun or do I want a TAC SMG? That should be a legitimate give and take choice. It should not be I just take the drum gun every single time. And with that, I hope this video was interesting. If you agree or disagree with me, feel free to leave a comment below. Happy to discuss this with you, and I'll catch you in the next one.